The Green Bay Packers have really established themselves as the cream of the crop when it comes to the NFC North and the real standard bearers in that division and one of the more consistent contenders over the past 5 years in the entire conference in the NFC. So, this is a team that in theory doesn't seem to be that far away from winning a championship. But yeah, when you look in particular over the past couple of years at the results against teams like in particular the San Francisco 49ers, this is a Green Bay Packers team that you understand is close to being a legit championship contender, but really is farther away than people might realize. And one of the biggest reasons for that is a lack of balance as an organization, a lack of balance as a team. Now, heading into the 2013 season, one of the biggest lacks of balance they had was the fact that they were a very one-dimensional football team, in my opinion, and they were very pass-reliant and very reliant on Aaron Rodgers' right arm. Well, second-round pick Eddie Lacy helped balance out that offense and made it a more multi-dimensional operation and made the Packers' offense, in my opinion, more explosive and more dangerous overall, but they still lack balance coming from the defensive side of the ball. This is still a very offense reliant organization, an offense reliant football team. And in today's NFC, you have to have a little more balance. You have to be able to win games on both sides of the ball, either with your offense or sometimes with your defense. And unlike the teams like the 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks, the Green Bay Packers just can't do that right now. And as a result, that's why you knew you were going to get a big organizational philosophy shift to the defensive side of the ball in this offseason. Seeing the Packers get surprisingly aggressive in free agency going after Julius Peppers to try and improve the speed and athleticism and talent level of that defense. And you knew you were also going to get an emphasis early on the defense in the 2014 NFL Draft. Now, that doesn't mean that the Green Bay Packers needed to completely ignore the offensive side of the ball, because they still had questions, in my opinion, on the offensive line, at depth at wide receiver, at tight end in particular. But it was important for them to address speed, athleticism, and explosiveness on the defensive side of the ball. And they seem to have done that in theory. You can look in the description box down below at the results of the Packers draft in 2014. I would say their best pick to me is in the first round. Getting a guy like Clinton-Dix, a potentially multifaceted safety at free safety that you need in today's NFL, a guy that could play some in the box, a guy that could play a great center field, a guy that could sit there and defend against opposing tight ends and in particular opposing slot receivers. To me, Dix fits that mold and he fits the bill, and he could do a little bit of all of that stuff, and he's a much more explosive and athletic option there than what they've had in previous seasons, more athletic than maybe he even tested out at the combine. And for them to get him at pick number 21 to kind of fall into their laps, I thought was really good value, and it was a good job by the Green Bay Packers understanding, yes, this is the best available player at a position of need, and we don't need to get cute here and try and overthink things. Clinton-Dix is the type of player we need, because you could talk about the Sam Shieldses of the world, but nobody really views anybody in that Green Bay secondary, at least in my opinion, as a true impact type of defensive player. Well, a guy like Clinton-Dix comes in and changes that and could potentially be that type of impact defensive player. In terms of another guy I thought that improves the speed and athleticism and explosiveness of that defense was a guy that I think that was their best value, one of the best value picks in this entire draft, and that was Bradford, the defensive end / linebacker from Arizona State. The Green Bay Packers being able to get him right smack dab in the middle of round number 4, where I thought he was a first-round talent based off of the film that I watched. I understand he was kind of a tweener in terms of size, about 6'1", 250 pounds. People didn't like his length that much, which meant he couldn't stick a defensive end, and some people question whether or not he could be an edge rusher at the NFL. But you take a guy like him with his explosiveness, with his speed, with his quickness, with his strength at his size, and I think you've potentially got a guy that could start year 1 in the middle opposite A.J. Hawk and really bring a big-time necessary upgrade into the heart of that Green Bay Packers defense. And a guy that at times you could sit there and line up outside and he can rush the passer some. I thought it was tremendous value for the Green Bay Packers, the type of guy that you want to take in the 4th round by and large. Those guys that were productive at big schools, but maybe lack 1 or 2 of those elite NFL measurables, and as a result, they start to drop, but still highly productive players, and there's no doubt that Bradford was a highly productive player in 2013 for the Sun Devils. A pick that I think could also surprise is their fifth-round pick, Corey Linsley, the center from Ohio State. And for some reason, the Packers inexplicably let Evan Dietrich Smith go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in free agency, and I struggle to understand that. You were just starting to piece together a decent offensive line. It still had some work to do and still had some holes, but a better offensive line than you had had some in years past, with the guys like Bakhtiari and Evan Dietrich Smith. And now you take an Evan Dietrich Smith and you just let him go for nothing. Why would you do that? It wasn't like the price was so prohibitive, in my opinion, from the Green Bay Packers keeping him. It almost seemed like they just stubbornly said, we're not going to pay him more than this. We feel we can get somebody else and do similar things. Sometimes the grass is always greener on the other side until you realize the same shit and piss that fertilized the lawn over here fertilizes it over here. It looks the same, it smells the same, and it tastes the same. But you look at a guy like Corey Linsley, there's an opportunity there for him to come in from a major program like an Ohio State and be plugged in early on into the middle of that Green Bay Packers offensive line. So he's a guy that could surprise, not overwhelming in terms of his strength, but a decent technician, decent size, and a guy that I think could potentially be at least a solid starter at center in the NFL for years to come. In terms of things that I second guess with the Green Bay Packers, I love the Davante Adams pick in round number 2. I think he's a more polished version of a James Jones, maybe just a little less explosive. But some of the second guessing to me comes in round number 3. Now, Khyri Thornton, the defensive lineman from Southern Miss, a guy who's probably going to play that 5 technique end in Dom Capers' 3-4 defensive scheme. I see the explosiveness. I see the athleticism there, and I see how he fits the mold of what the Packers are wanting to do with their defense in 2014. It's just, to me, 2 things. One, the Packers have invested a ton of early picks on the defensive line in recent years to really checker to mixed results. Guys like B.J. Raji and Mike Neal and Detone Jones and Jarrell Worthy. How many picks are you going to devote to that part of your team and still have it not work to where you still are addressing it again and again? And when I look at a guy like Thornton, I really wonder, was there really that big of an urgency to have to take the guy at pick number 85? Were you afraid that he wasn't going to be there maybe in round number 4 or even later? I don't know. And then taking a guy like Richard Rodgers from Cal in round number 3 with that compensatory pick, he's a guy, again, that will get an opportunity. He probably can get some catches, and he was a prospect that I like. But again, I'm just wondering at the end of round 3 if that was a little too early for the Green Bay Packers to take him. Would you have been able to get him in round number 4 or round number 5? So with a draft that I thought was good for the Packers in several ways, their third round to me was a little bit questionable because I saw a couple of guys that maybe fit what they do, but maybe were a bit too highly thought of by the Packers and taken a little bit too early. But overall, I do still give the Packers a grade of a B. I think Dix brings a huge upgrade in that secondary. He's that type of multi-dimensional, impact-free safety that so many football teams are looking for in the NFL, and the Green Bay Packers desperately needed, and they just got. I like the draft pick as well of Davante Adams to be filling in that James Jones type of role. Not 100% the same type of player, but again, the Packers have a good history over the years of guys taken in rounds 2 and rounds 3 and even later of these guys coming in at wide receiver and being productive players. I go back into the day when I think about guys like Robert Ferguson being a second-round pick, Antonio Freeman a third-round pick, guys like Robert Brooks, guys like Donald Driver who were seventh-round picks. You look at guys like, Jordy Nelson, second-round pick. Randall Cobb, second-round pick. I believe James Jones was a third-round pick. These type of guys have usually been drafted with a pretty high success rate by the Packers. They've come in and contributed immediately or at least long-term, and I would assume Davante Adams is going to do the same thing. I love the pick of Carl Bradford in round number 4. Do I think he could play outside linebacker in a 3-4 at the NFL level? Absolutely. But do I also envision a situation where he could get more playing time potentially as a rookie on the inside in that 3-4 defense opposite A.J. Hawk? You're damn right. And he would be a big-time upgrade and fit the mold of what the Packers wanted on the defensive side of the ball. My biggest thing, again, I kind of question what they did in the third round. But in general, there were plenty of things, in my opinion, to like if you were a Green Bay Packers fan. The ultimate question is did the Packers bring more balance to their football team? Did they give their defensive side of the ball some help to help balance out that team, balance out that organization, to keep ahead of the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears and help narrow the gap between them and teams like the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. Ultimately, only time will tell, and that will be the true measurement of how this draft is viewed by the experts and by Green Bay Packer fans. If this helps narrow the gap, this draft is looked at as a key component of getting the Packers back to the Super Bowl, then it'll be one of those great drafts for the Packers, be viewed as an A. And if it doesn't, it'll be viewed as one of those mistake-filled drafts, and the Packers might actually regress a little bit and give up their throne as the creme de la creme of the NFC North.